Grateful acknowledgement goes to these companies who made this program possible by their contributions. Hebrew National, a tradition of quality kosher products. Empire Kosher Poultry Incorporated, the most trusted name in kosher poultry. The Seagram Classics Wine Company, sole U.S. importers of Carmel fine Israeli wines. Hanukkah USA, exclusive supplier of videotape for the Jewish Holidays Video Guide.
In the beginning, so many, many years ago that we can't count them, the Bible says there was nothing but darkness and water. There were no people, no animals, no plants. And then God began to create a world. God said, "Let there be light." God called the light day. That was the very first day. The second day, God made the sky over the waters. God made the dry land and called it earth, and filled it with flowers. Running water, and trees on the third day. The next day, the fourth, God made the sun, the moon, and the stars to give warmth and light, and to divide time into days, months, and years. Fish and birds were made on the fifth day, and then on the sixth day, God made the animals, large and small, and finished the work with man and woman. And God saw all that had been made and found it very good.
There's a rhythm in the turning earth, in the changing seasons, and in the cycles of our lives. And we feel these rhythms in the Jewish holidays we'll be sharing with you in this program. Hello, I'm Simon Cohen, and my family and I will be your hosts for the Jewish Holidays Video Guide. Now, I'll be telling you about the program in a moment, but first I'd like you to meet my co-hosts.
Hi, I'm David. I'm 8 years old, and I'm in the 3rd grade.
Shalom, I'm Elizabeth, and I'm 12. I've been taking some of the pictures we'll be showing you.
I'm Dinah Weiss-Cohen. We'd like to thank you for bringing us into your home, and we invite you all to come with us on a journey through the Jewish year. Now, as we travel, we'll come across some wonderful stories and visit with some families who will show us their personal ways of celebrating the holidays.
Our stories will include Jonah, who tried to run away from God, the exciting miracle of the Maccabees, a very serious treatment of the Purim story, our flight to freedom from Egypt, and some remarkable stories which may be new to you.
They were new to me, too. You see, when I was growing up, my family wasn't exactly what you would call religious or even observant. But when Dinah and I became parents, we started by observing the holidays for the children, and I learned quite a bit. So now it's for all of us. Now, in this program, you're going to see our approach, meet other families, and also hear from some people you just might recognize.
One of the phenomenons of my childhood Seder activity were the latke eating contests between my big, beefy oldest brother and my big, beefy dairy deliveryman cousin, both named Ben, who attempted to wipe each other out in the consumption of as many latkes as they could. And nobody compared to them. Nobody. Nobody wanted to.
All the things we care about most as Jews come up in the holidays. Being decent people, standing for freedom and justice, loving each other, and eating. Every holiday has something about eating.
Oh, excuse me. Well, since we're going on a trip through the Jewish year, we're going to need a map. And our starting place is out there in the night sky.
The moon. Long, long ago, when our ancestors were wandering shepherds and farmers, they celebrated every new moon.
Rosh Chodesh.
Right, Rosh Chodesh, new moon. And many of our holidays fall on either the new moon at the start of the month or the full moon in the middle of the month. The Jewish calendar also follows the sun, because after 12 months we start a new year, or 13 months in a leap year. And the calendar works so that each holiday always comes in the right season. In the fall, at the time of the grape harvest, the Jewish New Year starts with Rosh Hashanah, usually in September. The 10 days ending with Yom Kippur are called the Days of Awe, because they are a time for deep thought about how we acted toward God and each other during the past year. Just after Yom Kippur comes Sukkot, the Happy Harvest Festival, which ends with Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah, when we dance with the Torah in the synagogue and sometimes in the streets. In the dead of winter, we celebrate Hanukkah, the holiday of the Maccabees. Toward the end of winter comes the new year of the trees, Tu B'Shvat. And then we head into spring with our noisiest holiday. Okay, David? Purim. In full-blown spring, we arrive at our great freedom festival, Pesach, which we also call Passover. About 3 weeks after the end of Pesach, we come to Lag BaOmer, when we remember the great Rabbi Akiva and the revolt against the Romans. The summer brings us to Shavuot, when we celebrate God giving us the Torah. And finally, later into summer, we arrive at Tisha B'Av, a sad day when we remember the destruction of the 2 temples in Jerusalem.
You forgot the most important holiday.
Well, I saved the best for last. Shabbat, the Sabbath, comes every Friday sundown to Saturday night. And some people say that when the Messiah comes, every day will be like Shabbat.
Oh, just so long as I don't have to do all the cooking.
Well, this week I'm making the challah, just like my mother's.
Uh-huh. Our trip through the Jewish year will stop at those holidays which are most important to us today.
Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Hanukkah, Purim, Pesach, Shavuot, and finally Shabbat.
We'll follow the map of the year, taking each holiday in order.
And since our family has been known to get lost on road trips,
He doesn't like to ask directions.
we have added some markers to this program. We will fade out at the end of each holiday segment, and each new holiday will start with the name of that holiday over a shot of the moon.
Oh, that gives you a choice. You can watch the program from start to finish, or you can choose a particular holiday. But keep in mind that this program is about home use rather than synagogue practice.
Incidentally, some of the religious ceremonies you'll be seeing have been recreated for us. And during our prayers, we will refer to God as Adoshem Elokeinu. Now, if you see the word God in a prayer book, it will look like this in Hebrew, or like this in English. But during this program, out of respect for the name of God, we will pronounce it Adoshem Elokeinu.
And we'll begin not only at the beginning, but at the very beginning.
A Jewish month begins with a new moon, and the Jewish year begins with the first new moon of the fall. In our tradition, it is the birthday of the world, Rosh Hashanah. The first 10 days of the new year begin with Rosh Hashanah and conclude with Yom Kippur. It is a time of deep thought and great hopes.
Very good. Well, tonight will be the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, and we're going to have a special meal, as we always do for the holidays, with blessings over the candles and wine. This begins the 10 days of awe leading to Yom Kippur.
And then you and Dad will fast for 25 hours.
Liz, you'll have to next year.
Oh, that's right. Elizabeth will be 13 next year, the age to start fasting. Now, there are some things on the table that are just for Rosh Hashanah, and they tell us what this holiday season is all about.
The sweet apples and honey show our hope for a sweet and good new year. Not only is the year starting over, but so is each of us.
In order to make a fresh start, our tradition says we must do 3 things. First, face and admit the things we need to change in our prayers. Then we must turn away from bad actions and turn towards good ones. And finally, we must be charitable and give to those who are needy.
For me, prayer means searching inside myself for the things that I want to change. I actually write them down, and my prayers for the courage to be honest with myself.
You turn away from things you feel bad about and turn towards other people. My brother and I, we'd fight like crazy all year, but there was this understanding that we'd try to make it up before Yom Kippur. Usually we'd end up looking at our shoes and mumbling, but we both knew what was going on. For me, I guess it was the most religious part of the holiday, just admitting that we loved each other.
I always find that a little bit goes a long way. And since there are a lot of people out there who don't have much, I do what I can to give to others and spread around a little happiness.
Some of our friends in a Chavurah, a Jewish study and social group, have created a personal ritual for these days. Prior to Rosh Hashanah, they've written down the worst things they did in the past year. Words, thoughts, things they did that they wish they could make up for. They ask God to help them wash away the bad things they did.
I won't make fun of Nathaniel anymore.
I will stop yelling at my sister.
I will try to be more punctual and organized.
I will spend less time away from my family.
When I hear the Kol Nidre, the night of Yom Kippur, I think sometimes of Jews who were not as free as we are. In Spain, about 500 years ago, many Jews were forced to pretend they were Christians. But once a year, they gathered in secret as Jews. They risked their lives to say the Kol Nidre prayer, asking God to judge them by what was in their hearts, not by what they said in public. Even though they had no choice, they felt terribly guilty about making believe they were Christians.
Most of the sins that one commits are sins of omission rather than of commission. Most of the sins are even sins that one is not aware of specifically and particularly. But there too, the lovely thing is that Orthodox Jews used to insist that one should go around and ask everybody's forgiveness whom one might have wronged in the course of the year. You have to ask their forgiveness before you begin asking God's. And I think that that is an important aspect of Yom Kippur. You have to learn how to be forgiven. You also have to learn how to forgive yourself.
There's an old story that God writes each of our names in one of 3 big books: the book of judgment, the book of death, and the book of life. And if each of us has done our work between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, our work of looking honestly at ourselves, of turning towards good actions, of being fair and forgiving, then our names are written in the book of life.
Daddy, will you read me the Jonah book now?
Well, I guess I have no choice.
Once upon a time, there was a man named Jonah. One day, he heard the voice of God. "Jonah, go right now to the big city called Nineveh. Tell the people I see how wicked they are, and if they don't behave better, I will wipe them out." And you know what Jonah did?
He ran away.
Oh, I think maybe you know this story.
Yeah, but why did he run away?
Well, he gives us a reason later in the story. Do you know where he ran away to?
Nope.
Well, take a look.
Now Jonah lived near the seashore. God told him to go to Nineveh, which was very far inland. Jonah went to the harbor at Joppa, today known as Jaffa, and found a boat going across the sea to Tarshish. So God told Jonah to go one way, but he went in the opposite direction. But God sent a powerful wind that whipped up giant waves. The terrified sailors cried out to their gods, and they flung bundles of cargo into the sea to make the ship lighter. Only one person didn't know about the storm. Jonah had gone deep down into the ship and fallen asleep. "Wake up," hollered the captain. "Call upon your God. Maybe he will save us."
Why does he say your God?
Oh, that's pretty sharp. Because the captain and the sailors believed in different gods, as many people did in those days.
The sailors cast lots, which is like drawing straws, and decided that Jonah had caused the storm. "What are you doing here? Where do you come from? Who are your people?" they demanded. Jonah admitted that his God, the God of the Jews, was angry at him for not doing what he was told. "If you want the storm to stop," Jonah said, "you must throw me into the sea." Now the sailors were good men, and they tried to save Jonah by rowing hard, but the waves heaved even higher, and finally they had to throw Jonah into the water. The sea became calm at once, and Jonah sank. But God sent a big fish, perhaps a whale, to swallow him. For 3 days and nights in the belly of the whale, Jonah thought hard. He thanked God for saving him from drowning, and he said how sorry he was, and he promised to follow God's commands. When God saw that Jonah meant to change, God made the fish throw up Jonah onto dry land. This time, when God told Jonah to go to Nineveh, he went right away. Jonah brought a terrible message. 40 days from now, he told the people, God will wipe out you and your city. The king of Nineveh realized he had to show God that he was sorry and would stop being wicked. So he took off his fancy clothes and put on rough black sackcloth. To prove how sorry they were, the people fasted, as we do on Yom Kippur. They sat in ashes. They even covered their farm animals with sackcloth. God saw that they had changed from their evil ways, and so he changed his mind about punishing them.
So, how do you think Jonah felt?
Happy?
Nope. He was angry. Angry at God.
Why?
Because God changed his mind. That's why I ran away, Jonah said to God.
Why?
Because Jonah knew that even if he went to Nineveh and did exactly what God told him to do, the people of Nineveh would beg God to let them off, and God would do it. So God taught Jonah one more lesson.
How?
Well, Jonah went outside the city and sat down to see what would happen. It was very hot. So God made a plant grow to give Jonah some shade. But the next day, God sent a worm to kill the plant. And Jonah almost fainted, it was so hot. And he was very unhappy about the plant. So God said, Jonah, you feel sorry about a plant that you didn't even work for, and yet you're angry at me because I feel sorry for the thousands of people of Nineveh who are just learning right from wrong?
Did Jonah understand?
I think so. That's why we read Jonah on Yom Kippur. It teaches us that people can do wrong, feel sorry, learn, and change for the better. Even monkeys like you. Mwah.
Shana Tova. Happy New Year.
4 days after Yom Kippur, the moon is full. It's a harvest moon, the time to gather in grapes and other fruits and celebrate our joy in nature. The time of Sukkot.
You know, gathering fruit wasn't a lovely way to spend the day for the Jews of long ago. For them, it was life or death. The food they lived on came from the trees and the earth, not from the supermarket.
Judaism helps us remember our past and how we depend on nature. The Bible commands that once a year, we should spend time in a sukkah, which is a shelter we build open to the sky. Sukkot is one of our most joyful holidays, with lovely messages. Our dependence on nature, our thanks to God for the good in our lives, and hospitality, which means sharing our food and homes.
I guess you could call me an urban cowboy because I do my harvesting at the supermarket. I need something like Sukkot to help me keep in touch with the seasons.
It's great to look up through the palm fronds to the sky. It's also nice to thank God that you'll have a roof over your head when the holiday ends. The Sukkot reminds us how hard life was for our people before and how good it is now.
Sukkot means more than inviting your friends and family. We collect food for hungry people in our community.
There was a time when Sukkot was the greatest festival of the year.
If you could only go to Jerusalem once in your life, Sukkot was the time to do it. Jews came from all over the Roman world to celebrate. We called Sukkot simply the festival. In the city, we followed the biblical command to build booths and dwelled in them. We praised God, sang, and danced for 8 days. But the high moment of the festival came at night. The great torch dance celebrated the drawing of water and the joys of youth and the grown-up years as well. The dance began in the evening and continued all night until the following dawn. People said, if you haven't seen the torch dance, you haven't seen a real celebration.
Well, the party's not as wild as it used to be, but Sukkot is still a party. The first step is picking a place to put your sukkah. The rules are pretty simple. You can go any place except where you can't see the sky. For example, you can't put it under a tree or under a roof.
But you can put it out in your yard, or next to your house, or on a balcony if you live in an apartment. You can use wood, pipes, plastic, fabric, bamboo curtains, just about anything. In some cities, you can even buy prefabricated kits.
The most important part is the top. It's supposed to be made of vegetation and to give some shade. The Bible says it reminds us of the time when we wandered in the desert after leaving Egypt. We're also supposed to leave openings so we can see the sky. The rules say the roof should provide more shade than sunlight.
I'm not the most handy guy in the world, and we're like the Three Stooges build a sukkah every year, where I'll take a 2x4 and as I'm picking it up, I'll swing it back and hit Fran in the back of her head, or I'll be drilling a new hole for one of the poles and be accidentally drilling into a friend's arm. But in any event, one way or the other, we get the thing put up every year, and miraculously it manages to stay up. Our basic building block are the 2-inch by 2-inch by 8-foot pieces of wood. We have them in the corners of the sukkah and also for extra bracing in the middle of the sukkah. We bolt them together using about a 4 or 5-inch bolt and then securing it with a wing nut. We just insert each of the 2 by 2 by 8 pieces into a couple of cinder blocks which hold them in place. Now what we've done for walls of the sukkah is we have this bamboo-like curtain material, and this is just like curtains that you'd put up in a living room.
All sorts of decorations are used. Rosh Hashanah cards, printed fabric, fruit, arts and crafts projects.
It was a soothing presence to my childhood. I liked it. And I guess like any kid, it's, oh, we're playing house. And appreciated the departure from severity there. We called it Sukkot. And I like that. I mean, I like the beauty of fall. I like the participation, the agrarian symbolism of the smell of the citron. And I love the Sukkot. It's really one of the few times, I must say, just stumbling on it, that I found that blending of Judaism with the soil.
4 plants are used during Sukkot. 3 are bound together and called a lulav, a palm, a willow, and a myrtle. The etrog is a fruit called a citron, and it's chosen very carefully.
One of the goals in the holiday is to have all the things that you use for it as beautiful as possible, and that's particularly true with the etrog or the citron. One of the things that makes an etrog beautiful is its bumps. You want to get a bumpy as etrog as possible. Not a scarred etrog, but a bumpy etrog.
There are many ideas about what the 4 plants mean. They could remind us of 4 ancestors, or the 4 letters in the Hebrew name of God. My favorite says they're like a human body. The palm is like a strong backbone, the myrtle like clear eyes, and the willow is like lips which speak kindly, and the citron is like a loving heart.
Al netilat lulav.
We wave the lulav and etrog in all directions, just as God is everywhere. Everyone has his own style of waving, a bit of chance for personal expression.
That's a bee, yes, sir.
Yeah, bees make honey. Yeah, they make honey.
God
in their
made
nest.
bees and bees made honey. God made man and man made money. Money is honey, my little sonny, and a rich man's jokes always are funny.
That's a honey song.
That's a honey song. That's a nice.
I think Sukkot is a wonderful opportunity for children to participate and get a lot out of it. On the lowest level, I think it's just a lot of fun. It's fun to decorate the sukkah. It's fun to sit outside and eat outside, just like a family barbecue is fun in the backyard. On a little higher level, I think the children get a lot out of the sukkah holiday religiously. Sukkot represents feeling sheltered by God. The sukkah is a temporary hut that you build, and you really feel closer to God, I think.
We feel especially close to the Jews of Soviet Russia on the day which comes at the end of Sukkot. On this day, which is called Simchat Torah, thousands of Jews come together outside the synagogue. Even though the government tries to stop them from acting like Jews, this day they stand up in public and show that they are still with us. Simchat Torah means joy in the Torah, and we dance to show our joy. We used to dance inside, but now we come out on the streets to send a message that we are brothers and sisters to the Jews in Russia.
If you haven't built a sukkah yet, visit your friends and see what they do. Or maybe you can get one that's prefabricated. The most important thing is to get together with your family and go outside and allow this holiday to put you in touch with nature and our roots.
The 2 months following Sukkot move us into the dead of winter. It's the coldest, darkest moment of the year. And just at the blackest moment comes Hanukkah, the festival of lights.
A warm fire feels great on a cold night. And Hanukkah's kind of like that. It brings us warmth and light from a time that was very dark and cold for our people. Hanukkah's more than an exciting story. It has important things to say to us today, with maybe even a few surprises.
Hanukkah is first of all a celebration of freedom, freedom of religion. It shows us that a few brave people who believe in themselves can beat a much larger number. And even if they are defeated, they can still come back to win. Finally, it tells us to stand up and be proud to be Jews.
I think Hanukkah really is about religious freedom, and that it's significant that we think about it that way, and that we study the story and what it is trying to convey, rather than putting the emphasis on the commercial aspect and presence.
I think about Israel during Hanukkah. Almost always they're outnumbered so badly you can't see how they'll win. But somehow they do.
I'm a single parent, and sometimes I get down on myself feeling I haven't done enough for my son. But Hanukkah tells me I can fail and feel wiped out and still pick myself up and come back on top.
Sometimes it's hard to be different. You know, kids want to be like their friends. Hanukkah reminds us that it's great to be a Jew, even if you're the only one on the block.
You know, Hanukkah is the only one of our holidays whose date in the past is clearly known. It takes us back about 2,150 years to a time when the whole Western world admired and imitated the brilliant Greek culture. In fact, Judaism might well have died out about then. And it wasn't because of some mean king or something like that. We were doing it all by ourselves.
You mean people didn't want to be Jewish anymore?
Well, let me ask you something. To a young person, what's more interesting? Something new and exciting and a little outside the rules, or something old and kind of dull?
Are you kidding?
Well, if you lived at the time of our story, you'd be fascinated by the new styles in clothes, the new ideas, the new shows, and the new gymnasium in Jerusalem. Even young priests from the temple were working out inside. "Joshua, what are you doing dressed like a Greek?" an angry father might say. "Oh, you don't know anything about it," the son might say. "All the young people want to be like this. I'm going in there as soon as I'm old enough. And don't call me Joshua. My name is, Jason."
You see, many Jews changed their names and style of dress. Some even stopped keeping Shabbat and living as Jews. In those days, to be modern was to be like the Greeks. And also, if you wanted to get rich or be powerful, you had to get along with the powerful Greeks who controlled the country. And the most powerful of them was Antiochus,
who ruled a huge kingdom which his grandfather had helped conquer. He not only ruled Judea, but Syria and Babylon as well. The Jews were very different from the Syrians and the Babylonians. This gave Antiochus a tough problem. Egypt was at war with him. They might invade Judea at any moment. "My own subjects will help the Egyptians," Antiochus feared. "They're all different from us Greeks. The Babylonians have one god, the Syrians another. The Jews, well, they have some invisible god in the sky." So he gave an order to his generals. "All these different people must be made to worship our gods, think like us, even eat like us. Then they will fight with us against the Egyptians." Now remember, many Jews admired the Greeks so much that they already wanted to be just like them. Only some Jews held on to the old traditions.
But even if most of the Jews were on his side, Antiochus was still not satisfied. He wanted everybody to be just like him. He was the first of what we now call totalitarian rulers, rulers who want total control. They can't stand for anybody to be different.
Antiochus put up an idol, a statue of the Greek god Zeus, in our holy temple. And while he was at it, he stole all our precious gold and silver to help pay for his war. Soldiers went to every village to make Jews into Greeks. They would make an example of the village leader. Now, in the village of Modi'in, the leader was called Mattathias. "Mattathias," said the officer, "come and offer a sacrifice to our great god Zeus. Prove you are loyal to your king, and we will give you rich gold and silver, and the king will remember you." Until this day, the different peoples in the kingdom had all been allowed to follow their own religions. So Mattathias answered, "But even if all the others give up the religions of their fathers, my sons and I will do only what God has told us." The promise of gold and silver was too much for one villager. "I'll do it," he offered. With a mighty cry, Mattathias killed the traitor and smashed the altar. "Whoever is for the Lord, follow me," he called, and he led a few loyal Jews into the mountains. Antiochus's army came to wipe us out, but we fought back with stones and farm tools. We were in our own mountains, and our banner said, "Michamocha ba'elim adoshem," which means, "Who is like you among the gods, O Lord?" The first letters of the Hebrew words are Mem, Kaf, Bet, and Yud, which when put together spell out the word Maccabee. And so our army came to be called the Maccabees.
Also, Maccabee comes from the word for hammer in Hebrew. Now, the Maccabees lost some early battles because they wouldn't fight on Shabbat. But Mattathias decided that protecting their lives came first, even before Shabbat. So then they won some battles. But then Antiochus sent this huge army to crush them forever.
Judah, the son of Mattathias, became our leader after his father died. "We fight for our lives and for our Torah," he cried. The elephants could trample our men to death. Eleazar, Judah's brother, killed the fiercest elephant. Eleazar gave up his own life, and his bravery inspired the Maccabees to their greatest victory. Antiochus's army wanted no part of the fierce Jews. They ran away and didn't come back again. After they drove the enemy army away, Judah and his men destroyed the Greek idol, planted new trees, and fixed up the temple. Finally, Judah was ready for a very special ceremony called a dedication, a ceremony showing that the temple was once again clean and holy. The Hebrew word for dedication is Hanukkah.
The Hanukkah of the Maccabees went on for 8 days.
What about the miracle of oil?
Well, why don't you tell us about it?
They looked for a jar of oil, but they could only find a little jar that was enough for one day. But a miracle happened, and it kept on burning for the whole 8 days.
Well, we don't know if that really happened, but the rabbis told us that story to remind us of the real miracle of Hanukkah. What do you think that was? Well, the Maccabees were not soldiers. They were farmers, and yet they defeated a tough army with many more men. How could they do that? The miracle was their faith and courage, and we should remember that whenever we feel hopeless.
Let's light the candles.
Good idea.
Any candle holder is a menorah, but the Hanukkah menorah has a name of its own. It's called a Hanukkah.
The candles are put in from the right like Hebrew's written.
Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Amen.
We try to keep the present business under control. One night we give a big present, and then the others we give little presents. We let them pick which night they get the big one. And it's okay if you don't make too big a deal out of it.
Well, Hanukkah, as a child, all I remember was my grandfather giving me Hanukkah gelt. And it usually consisted of a silver dollar at Hanukkah. And we lit the candles. But that was it. Today, it seems to me that Hanukkah has been overly commercialized.
We put some money in our charity or tzedakah box before every Shabbat. This year we saved $35. Then one night during Hanukkah, instead of giving presents, we count the money and decide who to give it to.
Every year, our kids write on the dreidel box anything they want to say. That way, we emphasize our family and our life together instead of just the presents.
Kimmel, I get it all! The game's really easy. You take turns spinning, and before you spin, each person puts a piece of candy or a coin or whatever you're using into the pot. If you get a nun, nothing happens. If you get a gimel, you win the whole pile. If you get a hay, you get half. If you get a sheen, you put in half of what you got. The letters go nun, gimel, hay, sheen. My Hebrew school teacher says that they stand for Hebrew words, Nes Gadol Haya Sham, which means a great miracle happened there.
Hanukkah has become a very important holiday in our country, and I think we all know why. It's because of the overwhelming presence of a certain Christian holiday at this time of year.
You know, we found that celebrating all of the Jewish holidays takes a lot of the emphasis off of Hanukkah.
Coming from an Orthodox family, it was, the whole aspect of Christmas was very tough for me to take, very tough for me to identify with, and not being able to identify with it. So that any of the glow and the delight and the beauty of Hanukkah were vastly pleasing to me.
And we tell Elizabeth and David that we understand how they feel about Christian holidays. Many of the Jews at the time of the first Hanukkah admired Greek customs, just as we admire the customs of other people. But the Maccabees knew they were Jews and were proud of it, and they chose to live and die that way. We try to follow their example. How about a song?
Oh, good, let's sing.
Oh Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party, we'll all dance the hora. Gather round the table, we'll give you a treat. Dreidels to play with and latkes to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low.
One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago.
Winter is over, and the first moon of spring brings our next holiday. This holiday is... Will you please super the title already?
Sorry about that. Okay, it's ready.
The holiday is... Purim? Purim. P-U-R-I-M. Come on.
David, please.
Isn't that great?
Bravo, Maestro, bravo.
Okay, David.
Yeah, David, it's great. But I think you played a B flat instead of a C sharp. Oh, I found it. Hallelujah. Take a look at this. I made this when I was 15. You know, it still shows the main ideas of Purim. Purim celebrates heroic women, not only Esther, who saved her people, but Vashti, who stood up for her own dignity. We're told to celebrate the defeat of a wicked enemy, not just Haman, but all the evil enemies we've beaten. Queen Esther told us to celebrate by giving gifts to the poor and to each other. And we're supposed to break all the rules and get really crazy. Many people get so tipsy that you can't tell the difference between the good guys or the bad guys. This is the one day that we make fun of everything.
The theater company of our Jewish Community Center now brings you a true and historical presentation of the story of Purim. Yo, what?
The story begins long ago in the country of Persia. King Ahasuerus, Hash to his friends, loves to play go fish with his pals. The pals' wives used to be very quiet and very obedient, but not lately.
Get yourself.
The king's advisors told him that Queen Vashti was the one putting all the independent ideas in their heads.
Yeah, Ash is Vash. So what can I do about it? Sure, who's the boss? She already knows who's the boss. No, Ash, you're the boss of Vash. Me? Yeah! Really? Yeah.
Determined to prove to his pals that he really is the boss, King Ahasuerus sent Vashti an order he was sure she wouldn't refuse. But Vashti had ideas of her own about how to spend her time, and it didn't include dancing for the king and his buddies.
Get to the point.
The messenger performed the thankless task of delivering the king's message, but Queen Vashti was a strong-willed woman.
From Vash to Hash, I won't wiggle one little toe for those bums. And if you don't like it, you can get yourself a new queen. Now get out of here. That'll settle his half.
Meanwhile, back in the throne room, when the king heard Vashti's answer, he didn't waste any time looking for a new queen.
Boring.
But Mordecai, a wise old Jew, had just the girl for the king, Mordecai's niece, Esther.
And what's more, he's got the brains of a pigeon.
Actually, he's a sweetheart. Brains, I admit, well, that's not his strong point. Which is exactly why we need someone smart like you right next to him. Not everybody around here loves us Jews.
Okay, for you, my people, I'll do it. But I don't like it.
Mordecai arranged for Esther to meet the king.
Wow. She's the one.
And once he laid eyes on Esther, the contest was over. Not everyone loved the king. In fact, some wanted to murder him. But Mordecai seemed to find out everything that was going on. His problem was getting word to the king.
Here are the names of the murderers. Make sure my warning is written down in the big book of records. The king won't remember for 2 minutes that I saved his life.
The man who really ran the kingdom, the power behind the throne, was Haman. He expected everyone to bow down to him.
Oh man, stand up and bow down before Haman.
Haman. Very nice. For such a main man, well, I'll stand up.
Now bow down.
Sorry, that I cannot do.
What's the matter? You got an aching back, old-timer?
Mordecai explained to Haman that Jews would never bow down to a man, only to their God.
I've heard of you Jews and your invisible God in the sky. Who wouldn't have? When I'm done with you, you won't need to bow down anymore. You'll be flat on your backs permanently.
Haman had a plan, an evil one, to get rid of the Jews. He told the king that there were some troublemakers in the kingdom, and he asked, very innocently, what should be done about them. The king, whose mind was someplace else, told Haman to do what he pleased. Haman's plan was to send soldiers to kill every Jew in the kingdom. But when? To pick the date, they threw stones which landed on the 12th and 13th squares. And so it was decided that in the 12th month, on the 13th day, all the Jews would be murdered. The news of Haman's horrible plan got out, and the cries of the terrified Jews filled the night. Esther sent her trusted servant Hatash to Mordecai to find out what was going on. Esther was afraid to go see the king. Anybody who popped in and surprised him could be instantly killed by the king's guards.
Tell her I know she'll be risking her life. If the king fails to hold out his golden scepter, the guards will give her the axe. But if she tries to save herself, the Jews will all be killed.
Queen Esther was very nervous about seeing the king, but she was determined to do what she could for her people.
Let her go. Esther, honey, Queenie, come on down. What can I do for you? I thought I'd give a little dinner party, and you and Haman are invited to come.
Esther knew that the best way to a man's heart was through his stomach, and the king was no exception. She had a big favor to ask of him, but she decided to give one more dinner party before popping the question.
Only one thing, gracious Majesty. Could you and Lord Haman come again tomorrow night? Then I promise I'll have a very special recipe for Lord Haman.
The king ate so much that he couldn't sleep. He called for his secretary.
I thought I told you not to call me in the middle of the night. I need a bedtime story. I can't sleep.
The secretary read the whole story of the two men who tried to murder the king and how Mordecai saved the king's life.
Gee, that Mordecai's an okay guy. I wonder if I ever thanked him.
Ahasuerus asked Haman the best way to give someone a very special thank you. Guess who Haman thought the king wanted to thank? Haman said that Ahasuerus should give the man the king's own best clothes to wear, put him on the king's best horse, and parade him through the street.
Your Majesty, it does me too much honor. Besides, I haven't finished my writing lessons. Haman! You won't be on the horse, idiot. You'll do all the hollering. The one of the best horse on the best suit will be Mordecai. Huh? When I'm done with that uppity Jew, the only thing that he'll be riding is a hangman's noose.
But Mordecai did ride in the king's parade, and Haman was forced to publicly honor him.
Behold, this is a man who the king delights with honor. That was even more delicious than last night. There must be something I can give you. How about a golden skateboard? No. A lifetime supply of bubble gum. There is one thing, my lord. Goody, name it. You could save my life. See, an order has been given to kill me. What? Who dare do that? Nobody can kill my wife but me. Lord Haman has given the order to kill all the Jews on the 13th of Adar. I am a Jew, and so is my uncle Mordecai, the man you honored. He wants to kill us and all of our people.
This was the first time that the king really understood the evil nature of Haman's plan. The king had Haman executed. He appointed Mordecai as his new main man. Queen Esther had saved the Jews of Persia, and we've celebrated ever since.
I do recall when I was young that we had Purim festivals. I remember several of them. We always had the little knockers, and we were going to beat the heck out of Ahasuerus and so on. Or Haman, rather. Ahasuerus wasn't so bad. It was Haman was the bad guy, because Queen Esther, she manipulated Ahasuerus pretty good. But the hero of the whole story for me was Mordecai. Even though everybody says it's Queen Esther, it was Mordecai because my Hebrew name is Mordecai. And I remember one Purim play where they let me play Mordecai. And playing myself was like playing Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind.
Purim shows how comfortable we are with our freedom. We can let loose and make fun of ourselves. We throw off our shackles on Purim and have chaos. It's nice that the Jewish calendar specifically provides for us to have chaos.
You know, some rabbis have said that after the Messiah comes, only one holiday will still be celebrated, Purim, because we'll always need to have a good laugh.
L'chaim.
In the fullness of spring, the time of new life, we come to our most ancient and greatest holiday, Pesach, or Passover, the festival of liberation.
6 months ago in the fall, we celebrated the birth of the world on Rosh Hashanah. Now in the spring, we celebrate another birth, the birth of the Jewish people.
We became a people after God set us free. These are the great lessons of Pesach.
We were slaves in Egypt until God reached out and set us free. But because we had been slaves so long, we had to learn how to be free. And we had to learn that other people, even those who hate us, also should be free.
In this modern world, people sometimes feel uncomfortable talking about God and miracles. But that's the message of Pesach. God performed some extraordinary feats. We had to do our part, but without God, it wouldn't have happened.
My students at the university are supposed to be grown-up men and women, but many of them still want me to tell them just what to do. Because it's easier if somebody tells you what to think and how to act. But when we came out of Egypt, we had to learn to decide for ourselves. In other words, we had to grow up.
I always get a tingle when we're told at Pesach to reach out to strangers and to feel compassion for Pharaoh and the Egyptians. And I'm proud that being a good Jew means caring for people, even though they're not Jewish.
When we fled from Egypt, we didn't have time to bake bread. All we took with us was matzah, a flatbread that could be baked in a hurry. So part of our preparation for Pesach is to get rid of all bread and bread-like products. We call them chometz. We look for it all over the house and then lock it in a cabinet. Some people give it to the non-Jewish poor or even sell it and then buy it back after Pesach.
The night before Pesach starts, lots of families perform a special ceremony called the Search for Hametz.
You usually use a feather, a wooden spoon, and a candle or flashlight. We know Mom and Dad hide the chametz for us, but we pretend to be surprised anyway.
You burn the last of the chometz on the morning before the first Seder. I get a feeling of completion from this ceremony. It seems to tie the seasons together.
Pesach is no liberation for a woman unless the whole family helps to get ready.
You can tell a great deal about the Seder just by looking at the table setting. We have a full place setting for each person, including a wine cup, salt water, and the Haggadah, the book we will use for the service. There are over 3,000 versions of the Haggadah, some for children, some modern, some traditional. The important thing is to choose one which will hold the interest of everyone at the Seder. We set a special wine cup for the prophet Elijah, whom we invite to join us. Pesach was once called the Festival of Matzah, and the matzah is its most important symbol. And we also use 5 special foods to help take us back to the days of our slavery. Maror, bitter herbs, charoset, mixed apples, nuts, cinnamon, and wine, zroa, the shank bone of a lamb, beitza, roasted egg, and karpas, parsley. And finally, we put a pillow on the leader's chair to show that a free person can do something that a slave can't. Relax.
We'll show you our Seder, but please remember that there are many other approaches. The one crucial goal of any Seder is to find a way to bring the experience alive for everyone, especially the children.
Baruch atah Adoshem Elokeinu melech olam.
The Kiddush is the first of the 4 cups of wine we drink. Some say we wash our hands to make us feel like the priests of the temple who did lots of hand washing. Others think we do it so the children will ask about it. This custom is at least 2,000 years old. Incidentally, some families eat potatoes, celery, or carrots.
Borei pari ha'adama.
Try it. You're not really supposed to like it.
Why not?
How's it taste?
Salty.
Ever notice how your tears taste when you cry? Salty, huh? Well, we cried a lot when we were slaves in Egypt.
Why was that?
Keep listening. I'm sure you'll find out.
This is matzah, the bread of the poor and homeless, which was all we had to eat when we escaped from Egypt.
That's the piece we have to find later, the afikomen. Keep an eye on it.
All who are hungry, come and eat. All who are in need, come and celebrate Pesach with us.
My guest wonders sometimes if anyone ever came in. Not yet.
No Jew should be alone on Passover, and it is a mitzvah. It's a marvelous deed to be able to invite somebody to your home who hasn't got family. And people did that for me, as I did later on for others.
מה נשתנה הלילה הזה מכל הלילות, מכל הלילות, שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים חמץ ומצה, חמץ ומצה.
Sometimes we have the youngest child do all the questions, and sometimes we have them share. We try to keep them all involved. Occasionally we go to an adult Seder where each of us must bring a new question, and then we talk about them. In a way, the questions are more important than the answers.
On all the other nights we eat bread, but on the night of Pesach we eat only matzah.
I need your help to begin answering the questions, David. I need for you and everyone to use your imagination, because we are commanded not to think of this story as happening to somebody else, even our ancestors. We're to feel that it's happening to us. You might like it if you close your eyes, because we are going to take a trip into other places and other times. Places and times where we're going to share the troubles of other Jews.
Will we come back soon?
Well, this is the story about how God brings us back.
We go first across the ocean to a faraway country, Ethiopia. You know how it feels to miss a meal, to get real hungry? In Ethiopia, we feel that way every day, but they will not let us leave. From here, we travel to Soviet Russia, where the police arrest us if they find us studying Hebrew, but they will not let us leave. From here, we go back in time to Nazi Germany, where they murder us simply for being Jews. But we have much further to go, hundreds of years back, to Spain, where we can only be Jews in secret. So we hide the Shabbat candles in a box and whisper the blessings. And now we go back to our most faraway time, to ancient Egypt, where we are slaves. Remember, it's not only our ancestors who are slaves, it is us. I work from the moment the sun comes up until it goes down, making bricks from mud and straw. I cannot rest. If I do, the boss will use his whip on my back. And my children, Elisheba and David, do not go to school or play with their friends. They must work too.
Why don't we run away?
We can't. The king, who is called Pharaoh, has a powerful army. He keeps us to work, but he is terribly worried about us. These Israelites have too many children, he says. They might grow up to fight against us. And then he gets an evil idea.
He orders that all our baby boys be killed. So we hide them and do whatever we can to save them. A friend of mine left her beautiful baby boy in a basket, just hoping that some good-hearted woman would find him. The boy's sister Miriam told me that he was found by a royal Egyptian princess. The princess knew he was supposed to be murdered because she said this must be a Hebrew child. But she decided to save him and raise him as her son. She named him Moses, which means I drew him out of the water. This part always gets to me. I can't imagine how brave those midwives are to hide babies from the soldiers, and how much it hurts to give up a child.
Did Moses get to see his mom again?
I think so, David, because he always remembered that he was an Israelite, even though he was raised as an Egyptian prince. Now let's go back to Egypt again. Your dad is still making bricks for a pyramid.
Even when the bosses are cruel, no one dares say anything. You might be the next one to get whipped. I can hardly believe my eyes when one of the Egyptians, a prince, an Egyptian, fighting for one of us slaves? But later, I hear that the prince is Moses, and he's secretly an Israelite.
But now his secret is out.
Right. And he knows Pharaoh will try to kill him. So he flees to a nearby country where he becomes a shepherd, gets married, and has a son. And many years pass.
What about us? Did he forget us?
No, but what can he do? Until one amazing day, Moses sees a bush blazing with fire. He watches a moment and thinks, why doesn't the bush burn up? Then he hears a voice call, Moses, Moses. The voice says, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hides his face because he is afraid to look at God. God says, I have heard my people crying out, and I know they are suffering. I have come down to rescue them and bring them out of Egypt to a wonderful new land of milk and honey. I will send you to Pharaoh, and you shall free my people. Moses was afraid we would not believe that he came from God. Besides, he says, I am slow of speech.
What does that mean?
Well, he had trouble speaking. Maybe he stuttered. But God said, I will be with you as you speak, and will tell you what to say. Please, O Lord, send someone else, Moses pleaded. Now the Lord became angry. There is your brother Aaron. You shall speak to him, and he shall speak for you. Then God told Moses to take a rod with which he could perform miracles.
How do you think we felt when Moses and Aaron showed up? Happy to see them? All right, imagine again we are working in the hot sun.
The Egyptians have made me a foreman, a boss over other slaves. But this day I am furious. Pharaoh has suddenly stopped giving us straw, and yet he orders us to make just as many bricks as before. That's impossible. And when we can't produce enough bricks, the Egyptians beat the foreman.
But that's unfair. Why are they doing that?
Because Moses told Pharaoh to let us go, and Pharaoh got mad.
Moses talks to Pharaoh and Dad takes a beating. Why doesn't Moses just leave us alone?
God told Moses and Aaron to explain that God would punish Pharaoh and make him set us free. And then God would give us a wonderful land of our own. But what if Moses and Aaron were wrong or crazy? How could we know? When you're a slave, the beating you got this morning is what matters, not some faraway dream. It's hard to be a prophet when nobody wants to listen. But God told Moses to have Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh, and the rod turned into a snake. But the Pharaoh called on his magicians. And what do you think happened when they cast down their rods? They also turned into snakes. Can you imagine how Moses felt?
Pretty bad.
Everyone was mad at him. The Pharaoh, the Egyptians, and the Israelites.
Exactly. He was a big troublemaker. And he needed something a lot more impressive than a magic trick to make anybody believe that God was really behind him. So God gave him something a lot more impressive.
The 10 plagues.
Right.
Why 10? Why so many?
Well, let's see what they were. Look in your Haggadah.
The first plague was when God told Moses and Aaron to turn the Nile River into blood right in front of Pharaoh's eyes. But Pharaoh's magicians were able to do the same thing. But then Moses brought forth even worse plagues.
We pour a drop of wine for each of the 10 plagues.
How come?
Because God said we should feel other people's pain, even our enemies. Here we go.
Frogs, lice, wild beasts. The livestock died. Boils. A terrible hailstorm. Locusts ate all the plants. And a black fog covered the land for 3 days.
But still Pharaoh wouldn't let us go. He started to a couple of times when he got scared. But each time he broke his promise.
Why was Pharaoh so bad?
Well, what reasons can you think of?
He wanted to keep us to slave for him.
He sure did. Anything else?
He didn't like Moses telling him what to do.
Uh-huh. Anything else? The Torah says several times that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. God made Pharaoh act the way that he did.
Why would he do a dumb thing like that? I don't think it was dumb. You wouldn't. Wait a minute. Remember how we treated Moses when he said we were going to escape? We were so beaten down, we didn't even want to try. Maybe God wanted us to get so mad we would stand up for ourselves. So tell what happened.
Let's use our imaginations again and go back so we can feel for ourselves the end of the story. God sent the 10th plague in the middle of the night. Every home in Egypt, from the Pharaoh's palace to lowly huts, was visited by the destroyer who killed the firstborn child. But Moses had warned the Israelites to mark their houses with lamb's blood, and so the destroyer passed over them. In the middle of the night, Pharaoh has called Moses and Aaron. "Leave," he says, "you and the Israelites with you." Now all the Egyptians want is to get rid of us before any more of them die. We leave so fast that we don't have time to bake any bread. We carry with us the dough for making bread, and because of the heat and lack of time for the dough to rise, it became matzah, unleavened bread.
How do you think Pharaoh feels now?
Sad. I bet he's mad.
So mad that he leads his fiercest soldiers to recapture us. Our people are terrified. They must flee again. "What have you done to us?" they cry to Moses. "We told you before, let us be and we will serve the Egyptians, for it is better to serve the Egyptians than to die."
"Have no fear," Moses says. "The Lord will battle for you."
Then God puts a pillar of cloud in front of the Egyptian army, and when Moses holds out his arm, God sends a strong wind which splits the sea and makes a path. But Pharaoh charges after us with his fierce soldiers. If they catch us, they'll show no mercy. But when Moses raises his rod and holds his arm out, all of Pharaoh's army drown. And finally the slaves dare to hope. The Torah says they had faith in the Lord and in his servant Moses.
Oh, it's time for Dayenu.
Oh, good.
My father had a great sense of humor. And from the time that I can remember as a little kid, he always had one line that he always used when they were doing the recitation of the 10 plagues. And you take the wine and you take a drop of wine and you recite the frogs and vermin and all these other plagues that have visited. And when we finished reciting them, the 10th plague my father would always chime in with, and those were just the good things. And every year we waited for him to say it, and every year he said it, and we all laughed, and he loved it.
After the story, we drink the second cup of wine.
It's Carmel Cabernet Sauvignon. When we do the second hand washing, the kids have their chance to find the afikomen. Eating matzah is one of our oldest traditions.
The moror reminds us of the bitterness of slavery. We dip it in the sweet charoset, but it still feels as though you're swallowing fire. A great rabbi named Hillel said we should eat matzah and moror to remember there is danger of slavery even in a time of freedom. but there is hope for freedom even in times of slavery.
Okay, who's got it?
What do you give me for it?
How about a hug?
No way. $2.
Oh, what are you, his agent? Okay, I'm going to give you $1 for your savings account.
Okay.
And a hug?
Now?
Yes.
Okay.
We open the door to welcome the prophet Elijah, the messenger of the Messiah.
Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Atishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Agiladi, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, Borei Peri HaGofen. Amen. L'shana haba'ah b'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem.
Right. Next year in Jerusalem.
My favorite holiday is Pesach, Passover. And the reason I think it's my favorite is because it's based upon freedom and Thanksgiving, and it's child-oriented. And so this gives an opportunity to educate the young people. And freedom is a concept that I believe in. And so it's a nice way to get together with the family and talk about the concepts of freedom and what it means to our people, what it means to all people throughout the world.
We can only skim the richness of Pesach in this program. Jews from other parts of the world have different traditions that are part of their Seder.
In any event, the basic theme of Pesach is searching for Hametz, searching for the Afkomen, and most important, searching for the meaning of Pesach in our lives today. You know, we find new aspects every year, and we hope that you will too.
Seven weeks after Pesach, we arrive at the fullness of summer, the time of the wheat harvest. With it comes the last of our major festivals, Shavuot, the holiday of revelation.
To celebrate Shavuot in ancient times, Jews baked 2 loaves of bread from the first wheat of the summer and brought them to the temple. It was a way of thanking God for a good harvest. And it said something else. See, a loaf of bread comes from a kind of a partnership. God provides the fields, but the people must work them and make the bread.
Shavuot has grown to be more than a harvest festival. It's the time when we celebrate God giving us the Torah at Mount Sinai, and that we promise again to live by it. On Shavuot, we remember the day when Moses led us to the foot of Mount Sinai, and God called to him in thunder to come to the top of the mountain. And we remember the day when, despite our hesitation and fear, God gave us the 10 Commandments, and we agreed to obey them. That's why some Reform and Conservative, although not Orthodox congregations, hold confirmation services on Shavuot, in which their young people confirm their commitment to Torah. This gentle holiday rounds out our year with the key event in our history, our covenant with God to follow and cherish the Torah.
You know, we visited every major holiday except one, the most important one. This is the first Jewish holiday commanded by God, the one about which it's been said that if the Jewish people keep this holiday, it will keep the Jewish people.
On the seventh day, God finished making the world. Then God blessed the seventh day and called it holy, because on it all the work of creation stopped.
Shabbat is a kind of a birthday, really. A birthday for the world and all of us in it.
We have a party.
Every week, we celebrate the most important themes of Jewish life.
Our commitment to God and Judaism, our love for our family, freedom from everyday duties and work, a peaceful time to renew ourselves.
Each Friday night as I light the candles, I think about Jews the world over who are also lighting candles that same Shabbat. I also think of all the people like my grandparents who lit candles before me. And I'm also thinking about my children and their children who will be lighting candles long after we're gone. All of us working together to keep Judaism alive.
Best part for me is I get to be with my mom and dad when we do nice things together.
Shabbat is a chance to separate my workday world from my spiritual self. I start to think about Shabbat when I get hassled at work. The earlier I get hassled, the sooner I start thinking about it. I think this week I was thinking about it on Monday.
When I look over the week's Torah portion, I find that it takes me away from the everyday world into a more serene place. I look for more than just rest on Shabbat. When I do it right, I feel a kind of harmony, a balance with myself and my life.
Well, Shabbat is the only holiday mentioned in the Ten Commandments, and Jews have been observing it in different ways all through the ages. Now, the name may have changed a little. My grandmother called it Shabbos, whereas today we use the Sephardic pronunciation, Shabbat. But it has always been our special day. In the days of King Solomon's temple, people waited all week for Shabbat. It was the only day which had a name. Even the animals in the fields stopped working. Special loaves of bread were offered to God and eaten by the priests. 500 years ago, in the Judean town of Safed, a beautiful custom began. Men dressed themselves in wedding white and went out to the fields to greet the Shabbat as a bride. We still sing their song, Lecha Dodi, Come, my love. Within the last 100 years, our tradition has become much as we know it. This Friday night scene is from Vienna in Austria. Here's Saturday afternoon with a German family. You can see what each person enjoys most. Now let's see how we celebrate today. The Torah says we shouldn't light a fire on Shabbat, so we light the candles at least 18 minutes before Shabbat starts. Usually we say a blessing before doing something, but on Shabbat we light the candles first. You make 3 circles. Some people say to gather the light. Each of us sort of finds a personal style. There's no rule that men can't light the candles, even though women usually do it. You cover your eyes as if to make believe that the candles are not yet lit. Now you recite the blessing that actually starts Shabbat.
Lahadlik ner, lahadlik ner, shel Shabbat. Amen.
Shabbat shalom.
The best part of Shabbat for me is when I get to bless my children. Yisimech Elohim Kasara, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. Yisimcha Elohim Ke'Ephraim, V'chi Menashe. You're terrific, and I love you, and I'm proud of how you're doing in piano. And I love you, and I'm proud of you, and I love how you're doing with your singing.
Does everybody have wine?
Yes, I do.
And dry.
Oh, sure. Caramel Sauvignon Blanc. Vahi erev vahi voker yom hashishi. Vayechulu hashamayim v'yoretz.
The Kiddush starts by reminding us of how God finished creating the world and then blessed the seventh day, because that was when the work stopped.
Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav.
We praise God for creating the world, for leading us to freedom from Egypt, and for giving us Shabbat.
Amotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Salting the first piece of challah reminds us of what the priests did when they made offerings in the temple.
Can we all talk about our favorite times now?
Yeah, let's do.
Well,
The guest starts. And Judy?
Well, you know, I've been trying to get a part in this musical on campus. They had the auditions this week.
And?
I got the lead.
All right, that's great.
Many families make Shabbat dinner a time for sharing happy moments in their lives. Other families talk about the weekly Torah portion, or someone I helped, or they tell good stories.
I don't know. Aunt Judy, you decide.
Some people feel a bit awkward singing together at first, so only do a song or two until you get comfortable. The point is to have a good time together. The meal ends with the Birkat Hamazon, a series of blessings leading to a prayer for peace. Shalom.
What I love is when the kids have gone to sleep and the house is dark and the candles are still burning. You just let them glow until they go out.
On Saturday afternoon, people enjoy going to visit friends, or reading stories, or studying together. We leave Shabbat on Saturday night, after the sun sets, when the first 3 stars appear, in a ceremony we call Havdalah, which means separation. Some say the twisted Havdalah candle is like a coming together of the 2 Shabbat candles, showing how Shabbat brings us all together.
One explanation for looking at the light on our nails is that the difference between light and dark is like the difference between Shabbat and the rest of the week.
Shavuot Tov, 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 a good week.
The Sabbath is almost like a 19th century experience where everything is slowed down and the family becomes the most important thing.
My extended family is very close now, and I think one of the reasons is that we always had Shabbat as our personal, loving time together. My mother used to say that when we were young. It was very cute. We'd come home Friday afternoon, smell the freshly baked challah, and say, "It must be Shabbat."
If you haven't celebrated Shabbat before, the main thing is just to start. Start with anything, with something. Light candles, say the blessing. If you don't know it in Hebrew, then try it in English. Bless your children, be together. It's a time for family celebration.
The important thing is your own decision to make something special of Shabbat. You pull your family together, make a small island in time when you feel how good it is to be alive and to be Jewish.
And so we've traveled from one end of the Jewish year to the other. We thank you for voyaging with us, not only through the year, but through our common past. For the holidays have taken us back to the days when we tended flocks of sheep in growing fields, to our battles against enemies, and our search for freedom. They have taken us back to the day we stood at Sinai and received God's Torah.
To the people with a family, a growing family, to people who wish to identify with each other and knit themselves in an ever nicer, finer bond as a family. Nothing could be finer and more eloquent than the Jewish holidays.
And we Jews have always found new meanings in our holidays. As modern people, our journey with God and Torah goes on. And as we travel, we say to each other the word which means peace, hello, and goodbye.
Shalom.
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 Shalom, shalom. Bye.
Grateful acknowledgement goes to these companies who made this program possible by their contributions. Hebrew National, a tradition of quality kosher products. Empire Kosher Poultry Incorporated, the most trusted name in kosher poultry. The Seagram Classics Wine Company, sole U.S. importers of Carmel fine Israeli wines. Hanukkah USA, exclusive supplier of videotape for the Jewish Holidays Video Guide.